Okay, we are here. Um, Let me add Barbara and Hassan to the stage. Can can you hear us? Oh, ca- hi everyone. Can you hear us? Awesome. Perfect. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. We're going to start. I'm sure other people will stream in, and we're also live on YouTube. So I just wanted to let you know that you are also on YouTube, and we're going live. So we're here to talk about tech careers of the future, and I really think that we should discuss AI agents. And who is a better person to talk AI agents than Sat Ramphal? Sat is someone who's actually using AI agents to run a business in the insurance industry. So I thought I should share that wealth of knowledge with you all, and I decided to ask him to come into to my channel to talk about AI agents. So the first thing I'm going to do is introduce myself and then let Sad introduce himself. So I'm Sorry Bell. I am a responsible AI consultant, and also I work for the Department of Homeland Security, working on AI compliance and AI governance. I am here on my own time and on my own behalf. I'm not here representing the US government or anyone else. With that, I want to pass it on to Sat so he can introduce himself, and then we're going to jump into questions. I'll be moderating, I'll be asking questions, but I will definitely leave time for you to also ask questions. And, we're a small group here, so please feel free to ask all of your questions to Sat, take advantage, because he's going to explain it to us like we're five. He's going to be gentle and kind, and really explain things like on a basic level. So with that, Sat, please introduce yourself, and then we'll jump into questions.
Thank you so much, Sorbel, and I'm really excited to be here. So good to chat again, especially on interesting topics like these. A little bit about myself. My name is Sat Ramphal. I'm the CEO and co-founder of My AI, which was co-founded by three brothers. So I have an older brother and a younger brother as well, and we all work together pretty well. But I am a four times founder. I've been in the startup tech ecosystem space for the past 12 years. Ever since I dropped out of college when I was 19 years old. I was maybe 3 weeks into my college career, dropped out, started building tech businesses, and it's just been a journey ever since then. And so I have experience working in the fintech space, the healthcare space, the insurance space, retail space, as well. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Okay, so I think we should jump in. I think we should start with the first question. Uh, and Sat, like we're five here. Could you explain what agentic AI, aka AI agent, is in simple terms, and how it differs from traditional AI systems that most people might be familiar with? So most people are familiar with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, but we are like when you say AI agents, like you lose a lot of people. So please go ahead and explain.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting term, AI agents, because I remember when it started confusing me what the heck it really meant. It's interesting because the term AI agents really got coined only about 7 or 8 months ago. I would probably say, probably the last 2 quarters of last year was that really coming out into like public and marketing. And essentially, how I look at it, and I just also want to say, just for the stage, that I do not use me and my organization. We do not use AI agents and that terminology because our customers don't even know what it means. Our investors half the time don't even know what it means. And so, essentially, what it really is a smarter and more intelligent way for workflow automation or RPA systems to kind of advance in the processes or day-to-day workflows that is going on in an organization. But it's like fully done and managed by the AI. Whereas before, with like RPA or automation system, it's very clunky systems that were managed by managers, project managers, and then an entire tech team, like an entire tech team of RPA developers, which is robotic process automation. Agentic AI, which is again I like to call smart workflow automation. It's also what my customers understand. Kind of really breaks up into four areas, I would probably say. And NVIDIA did a really good job at also kind of explaining this as well. But I'll say like how agentic AI operates and kind of what are the things behind it. I'd probably say the first stage is perceive, where the AI is perceiving and gathering data from different sources just to understand where's like a basis of where it stands. Then the next side of it is reasoning. So like using large language models to orchestrate different types of like thought processes or queries against the perceived data. And then this is where it gets more on the agentic side. It's number three and number four. Number three is kind of act. And that's kind of where it's doing like workflows or some sort of like task automation. Maybe it's filling out something, maybe it's submitting something, but it's more on like the actual workflow side and getting something done. And then on the last piece of it is learn. Learn meaning it's learning all like the workflow and the processes to make workflows a little bit more efficient over time. How I would say and kind of define how it's different from just conventional AI of generative AI. Generative AI is really great at a few things, but it's not the solution. So, most people using generative AI to summarize something, develop content, draw something, but there's a ton of things that happen, after that. Like, okay, fine, you're generating content for a marketing campaign using ChatGPT. But then there's a ton of things you got to do after that. And this is kind of where agentic AI kind of steps in is okay, after the content's created, maybe you want to auto upload it to the job posting. Maybe you want to auto set it like a daily spend, things like that. So that's kind of the differentiation between what I would say is generative AI is much more of like a creating something or a response to something. And then agentic AI is much more like hands-on in doing something and communicating across departments or employees.
Okay, so a few things to follow up on. Can you just spell out RPA? And and please, Barbara and Hassan, if you want to add comments, if you have follow up questions, we're a small group, so we have delivery to do that. But can you say like, can I consider ChatGPT and AI agents? Like, can you just give me a name or like a popular reference for me to just place to the name of an AI agent?
Yeah. So ChatGPT out the door, what most people in the world are utilizing today, it's not an AI agent.
Okay.
It's much more of just utilizing ChatGPT as an app to ask it questions and get responses on things. However, there is a separate side that OpenAI has in common of ChatGPT, which is the agentic AI piece. But you have to kind of manually go in there, right? And kind of set your workflows and like build the nodes and connect it together. Maybe some integrations need to be connected. And so that's kind of what I would probably say is like using OpenAI as the example because I do have agentic technologies and workflow automation systems that they've built in for the generative AI side because they realize that generative AI is not the solution. There's much more to it after that. So you can kind of go in if you're using like an enterprise situation and build out your workflow, build out the nodes, connect different integrations together. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. And RPA stands for robotic process automation.
Okay.
Um, if everyone knows who UiPath is, they are the big giant in the space for workflow automation. That's where kind of, RPA is based out of that technology they built about 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
So, Sad, is there any way that I can go somewhere and build my own AI agent without knowing how to code, without being a technical person?
You can. OpenAI has it. You don't really have to have a heavy technical skills to be able to do it. I'd probably say you have to have some sort of like technical acumen of how to do things, technically speaking, how to use different systems, like Slack, for example, and email. Those are two different systems, and how do they operate together? I'd probably say you have to have like just a little bit of knowledge in the space, and maybe a little bit of knowledge on how to make an integration, which is just a connect or a button that says connect to the integration. But you can go to companies again like OpenAI. Nvidia is starting to come out with their own version of it. And it's a technology in space now where a lot of the conventional generative AI companies, LLM companies, are coming out with their agentic AI technology where you don't have to have a lot of technical skills to be able to build out a workflow, which is a great thing for the non-technical folks.
But do you need to know Python? Do you need to know SQL? Or is it more like a vibe coding thing that we can get away with?
Yeah, I think it's much more of the latter, where you don't have to know any coding languages in order to be able to achieve your workflow. Now, don't get me wrong, there probably are some companies out there that still have much more of a traditional RPA-based, agentic AI-based technology, where you might have to know some coding languages in order to achieve your workflow. But I would probably say much more on the popular side, you probably won't be in the future.
Okay. Okay. Well, now let's make it a little bit more concrete, right? So, you've built your company around applying agentic AI to the insurance industry, right? So, can you explain what specific insurance problems or any inefficiencies in the insurance industry does this technology solve that previous approaches couldn't address? Like, how can AI agents solve inefficiencies that ChatGPT and generative AI cannot solve?
Yeah, thanks for your question. And I'll put on my entrepreneur hat here for a second and just talk about the space that we're in. First of all, there are a ton of workflow automation platforms out there. They're in every industry and every space, but particularly how we're looking at the insurance industry, which also has a ton of workflow automation, agentic AI technologies now, is we like to go after the unsexy areas, which could be traditional manual workflow areas that nobody really tries to throw technology to solve. And so it gives us a great market to kind of niche into. But the areas that we are solving inside of the insurance space, well, the first area is around recruitment. Everything for the insurance industry is revenue and revenue generating environments. So, like for the agencies, right, they're all about recruiting new salespeople and certified brokers so they could sell more policies so they can make more revenue. Like that's the game of the insurance industry. So that's the first thing we help to solve. So today they're seeing without Maya, they're seeing recruitment to be about 7 weeks to hire a new salesperson. Utilizing Maya, we've gotten that down 3 days to be able to get a new person hired and deployed and start selling. The second use case that we deployed is around policy retention. So, we work with insurance companies that have policyholders where they got their group benefits from their employers that they're no longer employed at. And so we help them kind of retain them as a policy where Maya communicates to them, um, helps them with incentives to stay on, and initiate and build out the workflow for the back end office to kind of update and keep them as a customer through the incentive program. So those are the problems that we today solve in the insurance industry, and we've been going really, really well. But why haven't other technologies been able to solve this or even do this in the space? And the thing is, with like even with generative AI and open AI, our companies are not implementing it. And the reason why is because of just how much labor it takes to set up and deploy, because it still takes maybe a few months to build out the workflow, productionize the workflow, and then deploy it inside of the customer's environment and then test it out. And then fundamentally speaking, the way that most AI companies out there, they think a little bit different than us. When they onboard the customer, let's get a bunch of data, let's train it, our model on it, then we'll deploy it in the customer environment. Then we'll revisit it every 2 or 3 months and kind of fine tune it. we think about it very different, where we just get a basis of the workflow up front, and then that's what we use and deploy in a matter of days or hours, and then it fine tunes on its own. So there's kind of no human intervention. Now we target the agency space, which is a small local insurance companies. So they don't really have a budget to hire an RPA developer. They don't have a budget to wait 6 months to deploy a workflow. So that's why we've been really effective and successful at deploying in these environments, because of like the low cost of entry and our times of value is very quick.
Awesome. And we have a follow-up question from Sheila, who is here. Um, so she says, can you explain a bit how you use agents to implement the second use case, policy retention?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Happy to do so. Thank you for the question. So essentially, Maya is doing all the upfront work of sorting through all of the policyholders through like your CRM that you have, looking at what policies are there, when they expire, who's up for renewal, and then Maya will communicate to them using text message or email or even voice features. Kind of incentivize them to stay on the plan and policy, and then Maya, once they like agree to it, Maya will then route them to an internal person to kind of close the deal. So it route them to an internal human, collect their updated payment details, maybe what new policies or features they want to add on the policy, and then kind of close the deal that way. So because today a lot of the agents, when I say agents, insurance agents, they're not spending a lot of their time on loss and prevention. They're spending a lot of their time on new policies. So the loss and prevention kind of gets pushed to the wayside. So if the AI can help reduce the churn, that's where it works out very well, with Maya's doing mass communication to a lot of their policyholders that are up for renewal.
Awesome. So, um, this is a tech careers of the future channel, right? So I really want to get into how can we use this AI agents thing to build a career, right? So what are the core skills that someone would need to develop if they wanted to build a career working with agentic AI systems or AI agents, however you want to call it? And can you talk about like the automation replacement versus automation um I can actually you know build a career with? Like, is it going to replace me or can I use it to build a career? And
Yeah,
what are the core skills? So those two questions.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think I'll start with your latter question. So, it's very interesting. This is a topic it's a very fine edge, double-edged sword topic, um, because everyone's fearful as well that AI can replace them. But if we look at every technological revolution that we've recorded in human history, um, yes, technology revolutions have replaced some roles and jobs, but they've fostered and created 10 times more than the ones that they replaced. And I'll give an example, right? If you look at, animation studios, when that technology came out, all of the animators that were working at movie production studios went on strike because they believed that that technology was going to replace them. But essentially, they were able to hire more animators because they were able to produce more movies because of the animation studios technology revolution. And so this is not just the case with animation studios, but almost every technology revolution that we've seen. And so we at my company fundamentally believe that certain things can be fully automated by AI. But like the really important things, and a lot of things actually, cannot be fully replaced by the AI. We heavily believe in human in the loop. Human in the loop allows for quality. It allows for reinforcement training at the end of the day. And it allows for humans to actually become a little bit more knowledgeable inside of a workflow for the agentic AI future. So like for example, right? We had a use case in our past where we dealt with a lot of like regulatory submissions. So like companies like insurance or pharma companies would have to submit to like the FDA or Medicare and Medicaid, their regulatory submissions. We did not want to leave that upon an AI to submit the regulatory report. We wanted to rely on the AI to help curate the data in the report, but leave it to the human to help submit, to hit that button that hit set submit to the agency because of their quality assurance and checks. So I heavily believe in the human in the loop aspect. To your latter part of your question, I mean, will agentic AI fully replace humans or keep humans in the loop? And I think human in the loop is a part of the future, just in my personal opinion. Now, on your first question around like what are the core skills and you know, technical aspects you might need to learn, as we've seen when the generative AI boom came out, OpenAI was paying, you know, prompt engineers like 800K a year. You know, that was a big skill and role that was in huge demand. We have seen that role go down
Mhm.
so hard and fast because of the generative AI can now build generative AI components. You have AI that's doing coding as well, and that's going to grow even more in the future. And so, as far as someone building the skills around agentic AI, I believe that they would have to have heavy skills in knowledging in processes and workflows. So understand how processes work, understand how workflows work, in maybe a very specific area, because I think domain expertise also has a value point in here. So let's just say you're, you know, in the healthcare industry, right? And you've been there for 5 years. You know how things operate, how functions are done, how workflows are done. And so you can take that and now maybe put that into an automation process because you just know how the process was before. And in your head, you know how it could be a little bit more effective or simpler using technology. And so I'd probably say the number one thing, in my opinion, would be understanding how processes and workflows operate and how they are dictated and how they're functioned inside of certain industries. And it differs from industry to industry. It even differs from company to company. No two companies operate the same way in terms of how they do things in a workflow. It's very different. So I'd probably say that's the number one thing. Of course, you'd probably have to have conventional technical skills on how platforms work, how technologies work, you know, and I'm not talking about deep LLM skills of prompt engineering. It'll be great to have those skills. It might make it a lot simpler, but I don't think it's needed to develop an agentic AI workflow.
Awesome, awesome. So, my follow-up was, are this
Oh, I think
premiere
you're on mute there, Sorvel.
I am so sorry. My follow-up was, are this primarily technical skills, domain expertise, or something else entirely? But I think you answered, you already answered, like, it's mostly domain expertise, and it sounds like project management skills.
Yes, yes, it does.
And that's insane. That's insane that um you can use your project management non-technical skills to work with in domain expertise to work with AI agents. So Sheila is actually asking, can you give an example of one insurance workflow? But I'm gonna rephrase it a little bit and say, can you give an example of one insurance workflow where project management skills and domain expertise are the key skills to this instead of Python, coding, SQL?
Yeah. So it's interesting. When I look at a workflow is inside of a company's processy, right? One department to the next, maybe from marketing to sales. There are no technical skills that might be needed in doing something in sales or marketing. So I just wanted to mention that you know, in a workflow you don't really have to have technical skills, but your domain skills of your role. So I'll give you an example of one of our workflows that we have, and it's around recruitment. So as we help like the agencies recruit new certified brokers. So Maya's connected to, you know, like Indeed or an ATS system or some sort of like applicant tracking system where she'll look at potential employees and she'll qualify the resumes. She'll communicate to the potential employees about the job, ensure that the, you know, the pay, the commission, the environment, the culture, everything is, you know, merged and synchronized with that potential employee, and then set them up for an interview. They come in and they do a human to human interview. Again, this is where we believe that the human in the loop is very important, because if you're hiring someone, I don't think I personally don't think that an AI does a really good job at the interview process, because I think humans can sense culture, can sense energy, you know, as they're talking to someone over the table. So that's the only part where a human's in the loop, and then Maya can kind of continue with the workflow of like onboarding them, helping them with training, certifying, and deploying them out to the field. That's a full workflow. Now, inside of that process, or sorry, that's an entire process. Inside of that workflow and the process, there's a ton of workflows. So, where our technology is communicating to potential employees, setting them up with interviews, communicating to the HR manager that you have a new interview that's coming in on Wednesday at 10 a.m. You have another interview that's coming in on Wednesday at 11 a.m. And then kind of setting them up with being prepared for that. And then also preparing the potential employee on the job that they're coming in and interviewing for. Um, so I would say that's an example of one of our workflows that we have in the recruitment space for the insurance industry.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Um, okay, so I want to move on to the next question, and I think we got into it a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit more, just to make sure that that question is addressed. How do you see the relationship between human workers and AI agents evolving, both in the insurance industry, because that's your domain, but also in other industries, if you can talk about that? Let's say
Yeah,
over the next 5 years, because I say over the next 5 years because I don't think we can predict more than 5 years. And also because there's talk out there that AGI will be here in 5 years. And I'm believing it. So I want to hear from you about like that relationship. And you don't have to, try to make it rosy or make it like, no, you shouldn't worry. Just, be honest. Go ahead and tell us the truth.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be where in the future humans are going to be working with AI agents, but they're not going to know they're working with AI agents.
Wow.
The AI agents are going to be so good at communicating and performing work that it'll just be treated as human to human interaction. It's interesting because in our space, right, we do a ton of AI agent works where Maya is actually part project manager communicating a workflow from one department to the next and saying, "Hey, Mr. Guy, you have this task to complete on this day." And then the employee's like, "Okay, thank you for sending me over the workflow. I'll get it done." And then Maya's going to follow up with them, ensuring that it's done. But they never know that Maya is an AI or an agent. They just think that she's another project manager or human that's communicating the workflow. So I believe the future is going to be that they don't even know that the AI agent is there because of how well it could communicate and do things.
That is insane. That's crazy. That's
It
really
is.
crazy.
Sure. It is. It is. It's crazy to think about, but it's so interesting to see like that's where it can evolve to where, you don't even detect the AI anymore. Like the hallucinations are gone because they're doing such a good job at the LLM space that they won't even know.
So, which jobs do you think might be transformed rather than replaced? Like, because if my AI is being a project manager, why would an employer pay me to be a project manager?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, but yeah, which jobs may be transformed rather than replaced, and which jobs may be replaced?
Yeah, I think that the future project management like that positions might be the one that gets replaced with agentic AI specifically. Because agentic AI is all about the in-betweens of the workflow, communicating the workflow, following up with the workflow, at least in our space, that is. But I think the roles that are going to be transformed by agentic AI is cybersecurity for sure, human to machine interactions. So that's going to be a role that's going to be probably a very demanded role in the future where that they want to be able to create much more synergetic experiences between human to machine, so that way they don't detect the AI and then the interfaces behind it become very fluid and less robotic. So I'd probably say a lot more functionality around the AI's integratable setting is going to be a role that's transformed in the future much more than like a prompt engineer, right? That's what I think.
Okay, and one of our audience members, Barbara, she works in cyber, so I'm sure she's very interested in what you just said. So my next question is, for someone watching this who has no background. I mean, I have background in AI, right, but no technical background. But I'm talking about background in general. But
Yeah.
it's interested in this field, right? This AI agents that everyone's talking about. What would you recommend What would be your recommended learning path to eventually work with agentic AI systems? So someone starting from zero and
Yeah.
then building up to working with agentic AI. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I would probably say the first thing that I would do is what's the process or the workflow that's done manually today that I would like to make more efficient
Mhm.
or a little bit more automated? That's where I would start as the first point. So if I'm working in like the retail space, can I make, ordering or, make my vendor management of new vendors that I look for every day to create, less bulk wholesale prices, like those workflows behind that. Is there anything that I can do to make that more efficient? And I really learn it and learn the inside and outs of that workflow and what's involved in that process of doing that. That's the first part I would start. And then as far as looking for the technologies that can help, I would personally start by looking at domain focused technologies instead of general technologies, because domain focused technologies might be a little bit less hallucinogenic. It might be a little bit more responsive on the actual industry and workflow that you're trying to solve, as well as a little bit more undetectable when it's implemented.
Okay, sounds so. This sounds too good to be true because you haven't mentioned anything about learn to code and learn Python and none of that. Like, are you just saying that, or are you? Do you mean this? Do you actually mean that we can get there without having to, and when you say that, let's talk about a mid-level manager at a retail store. um this is someone who doesn't have a career in tech, doesn't have those tech skills, and are you telling us that someone can rise up and be an eight and they can be an entrepreneur in AI agents just by knowing their manual process really well, but by knowing the domain focused technology? Like, is that what you mean?
So if they're focusing on building like an agentic AI system, then and I'm not saying implementing the system, I'm talking about building the technology, then yes, you'd have to have deep
Okay.
technical skills
Okay.
of both coding and AI skills and RPA workflow automation skills,
Okay.
all of that.
Okay.
But if you're an employee at an organization and you want to think about implementing it in my organization, I don't think you need a ton of um, you know, coding skills.
Hmm.
Uh, because there are platforms that are coming up where you can build agentic AI workflows and just integrate them. You don't have to like code them in.
Hmm.
You can integrate them into Gmail and Slack and Asana and Monday.com. And then it starts to assign workflows and build workflows and assign them out to employees. So in the future, I don't think you'd have to have a lot of technical and coding skills. Today, you might.
Hmm.
You might, just because the technology is still pretty early. You might need to know a little bit of coding skills and like API skills of integrating the integration because the platform probably didn't build the integration yet. So today, yeah. In the next 4 or 5 years, in my opinion, I don't think you're gonna have a heavy need for it because
Okay.
everyone's trying to build it in such a way where it's easy to deploy,
Yeah.
little to no technical skills. Like that's where I see a lot of the technical AI startups are going towards.
Okay. Okay, well, let's take a little bit of a detour to talk about the ethical considerations.
Hmm.
And Barbara asked as well, what ethical considerations are unique to AI agents compared to other AI applications, and what are the privacy risks
Yes.
to agentic AI?
Yes. This is a very interesting question. So, as far as like the privacy risk, and I mentioned that we kind of fundamentally look at workflow automation, agentic AI is very differently. We believe that we don't have to get a ton of data upfront and then like train it and then deploy it. We believe in getting like one example of your workflow, let's train on the basis of that, and then using like reinforcement learning on its own, looking at data from the workflow can kind of get better over time. So from like an agentic AI perspective, I I think there's a less of a giant question on, hey, what are you doing with my data and the privacy of data? Because a lot of the data is towards the workflow of the process, not like generative AI, where like you're training on a bunch of proprietary data for like the LLM and reasoning side of things. So the generative AI is really good at the reasoning, um, and and so you could send it a bunch of data and then it'll learn on it. I think the bigger concern is on the generative AI LLM piece than it is on the agentic AI piece, because agentic AI is much more of like the workflow and the automation side of it. So there's a little bit less of a concern on the privacy side. Now, in our situation in our organization, right, we do have customers sometimes that ask us, well, hey, we were with you for 6 months and we got this workflow model so trained and tuned over time to our process. Will you take it and give it to my competitor or to a new customer? And then the answer to that is actually no. There's no advantage to us as a company doing that. And the reason why is because the way that company A does something is different than the way that company B does something. If we try to take the workflow that company A spent 6 months in fine tuning with reinforcement, and we go to give it to company B, it'll fall flat on its face because they just do things very differently. They may even use different tooling systems and things like that. So that's why I think there's less of a privacy concern on the agentic AI side than there is on the generative AI side, because generative AI LLMs has much more of a reasoning component to it.
So, but my follow up to that is what types, because this is a channel that talks about careers, what types of roles are emerging to address the challenges that AI agents pose? And I think, it's relatively new, but there's going to be a lot of cyber issues there, right? Like,
Yep.
and also this like autonomy thing, right? Like once AI agents work with us, they might accidentally do something that exposes information, or if AGI is here and they get mad, they could just like be another disgruntled employee and they could do bad things. So what roles are emerging in that sense?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because um our product, can get pretty sassy at times when she's talking to employees and even other customers, and so we do have to kind of control that. But I would say, as far as like the roles go, cybersecurity is going to be very heavily a growing role in the space of full autonomy and agentic AI, the human to machine interaction, and the quality assurance across the board. Quality assurance from the LLM side to the reasoning side to the workflow side to the process to developing new processes. So I think the roles are around, cybersecurity, human machine interaction, QA roles in the AI side. Those are going to be some growing roles, and that can kind of also fall under the umbrella of like robotics, right? Because that's going to essentially be growing into, after agentic AI is figuring out manual hardware robotics, and so how to implement it there. I think that's also going to be very much of a growing space. Um, yeah,
So you said Q&A, like quality assurance, cybersecurity. So the field of cybersecurity is going to grow in respect to AI agents. Is that what you're saying? And if so, how can people start preparing on that specialization?
yeah, definitely going to be a growing role, because as it becomes less being involved in the development and productionizing of like the agentic AI, there's going to be a lot of security concerns. And so cybersecurity is definitely going to be a growing space there. As far as how does the industry be or get prepared for what's coming and what's already here, um, I think they're doing it already. It's just staying on top of the concerns of what can happen, as well as educating themselves on the current technologies that are here, how it's built and deployed, what are other ways that they can build it and deploy it, which, I kind of mentioned before, like what's here today is take a bunch of data, train it, deploy it. does a future look like? Just give me two pieces of example of the data, and then we could deploy it. So also looking at other ways that they can make deploying AI a lot more um, uh, interesting for customers to utilize on the privacy side without giving up a ton of their data, because that's always been the biggest concern is data, and privacy has always been the biggest concern. So I think a lot of it as well is trying to also figure out how to deploy it in such a way or where it's that's not a concern in the future. And to be honest, I don't really have a total answer to that. I just have a bunch of opinions there.
That's right. Yeah, it's hard to predict the future right now, but it sounds like a really exciting career. It sounds like an exciting field to be in right now. Could you walk us through a day in the life of someone who works with AI agents and your AI agents, if that makes it easier? And what does that human and AI collaboration actually look like in practice? Like, walk us through that day, right? But also, how does the day differ? Like, from your day to day, like, how does it differ?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, the way that we see it today in our company and how it's deployed and how it's interacted, nothing really changed, because the agentic AI is almost treated like another human worker inside of an existing process. And when the employees don't know that it's an AI that's assigning me a task or communicating to me to complete a task, then it's just treated as another human to human interaction. And so I don't think that any employee is thinking that, oh, I'm building and doing work with an AI, unless they can detect it's an AI. And then if they detect it's an AI, then the feelings are a little bit different. Like, this stupid technology doesn't know what it's doing. It's clunky. It's sending me wrong stuff. Once they detect it's an AI, they start to push issues off onto the AI for anything that can go wrong, and we've seen that. But if they don't detect it, it's just treated like another human employee that's interacting with me as another employee in the company. Um, and so that's how we see it today in our organization. Yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Um, okay, so we got 15 minutes left, and I want to leave some time for the audience to ask questions. They have been asking, but if you have more questions, please put them in the chat. But I wanted to ask, what are the biggest misconceptions about AI agents that you encounter? And how might these misconceptions affect someone considering a career in agentic AI?
Yes. So I'll definitely have to think about the second part of it on the career side. But on the first part of it, a lot of the misconceptions that we get in like the agentic AI space is, this is too expensive for me to deploy. I don't have any technical team members to help me deploy this. And I see like the agentic AI space is a growing space to help really a lot of the small businesses that don't have technical people on their team but want to build automation and deploy automation and have automation. That's some of the biggest misconceptions that we see, like on the customer side, is that they think that agentic AI is not for them, it's more for the enterprise. And I actually think the biggest benefit of agentic AI is much more for the SMB space than it is for the enterprise space. Because the enterprise space have the money to hire RPA developers to develop and build workflows, and they've been doing that for 10 years. And so like that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I see. Um, Now, how might some of these misconceptions um, affect employees? Like another misconception is agentic AI is going to trigger a mass unemployment crisis. Um, we're seeing a mass unemployment crisis right now without agentic AI being involved, right? And so that's another misconception, though, is a lot of people might think that agentic AI is going to replace them a lot of times in a lot of areas, and I think again that it's going to replace jobs, but it's going to create and foster a lot more jobs. And so, as far as the career side of it, look at the areas that's going to be needed to work with agentic AI. again, like cybersecurity, like human to machine interaction, these type of things. Those are going to be very much growing careers, in my opinion. And so, as far as someone trying to figure out, like high school student, well, where should I really have a career in this growing future of technology? I would probably say in the areas that would work very well with agentic AI. Um, very much so. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Sounds great. Well, so, you know, I have just one last question. And I just want to, I think like we've already beaten that horse, but like I want you to provide us, all this job titles, career specializations that you predict in the next 3 to 5 years. And also, you know, talking about the technical people and also non-technical people. But like the most important thing is for you to tell us, like, where do we start? Where does a high schooler who is thinking about going to college and is hearing all this negative headlines that AI is going to replace everyone and that there's going to be no jobs. So why should I go to college in the first place? Why should I spend all this money going to college? Um, and also, you have people that are, in their 30s and 40s who are being fired and laid off from what were stable careers before. Some of them have technical skills, some of them don't. Most of them don't. So, what is your, recommendation? Like, start here, like, just learn this. And because when you give people like this broad, high level thing, they get overwhelmed and they don't do anything. But for someone starting, like, what would you say is something that they can start doing today?
yeah. That's a loaded question because I have a little bias there when it comes to, like, should I go to college and learn this and build a career? Because I'm a college dropout. I
Yeah,
have a
and
little bit of
you're the exception. You're the
bias.
exception. Like, no.
um, I believe in experience more than academic education. I'll say that there. As an employer, I hire faster, experienced people that are hustlers and know things and are incentivized to learn more than a PhD student. That's what I'll say, and that's what I'll also, because I'm in the recruitment space now. I can also see that with a lot of other companies. Like a lot of the insurance people we work with, they can care less if you go to Harvard or USF or University of Miami, but if you have 5 years sales experience, come on down. You can kind of sell policies. So that's my bias there. Uh, on the other side, how should maybe high school students think about the future and the careers that they want to kind of implement into? Um, well, I'll start by saying learn about where and start educating yourself on where you might see the next 10 to 15 years look like in reference to technological revolution. As we're in the agentic AI revolution now, the next stage is theory of mind AI. Not AGI yet. It's actually theory of mind AI.
Wait, can you say
And
that again? What?
so theory of mind AI,
Oh,
which is
theory.
essentially kind of hitting on the agentic AI stuff.
Okay.
It's essentially where the AI can observe people and behavior and processes and kind of communicate it and do it a little bit better. It's essentially what agentic AI is, but a little bit farther down the road, maybe a year down the road. And so I would kind of start there. Look at what might be the inflection points and the milestones of different revolutions of maybe AI or what might be coming next. Like, for example, we haven't even talked and touched on quantum. Quantum is coming. And so that's a whole other wormhole that we're not going to touch yet. But that's where I would start is look at and try to predict what might be the points in time, the timeline where these revolutions are going to hit and what's going to be needed to secure those technologies to be implemented responsibly. So, like agentic AI is here. What might be needed to implement it responsibly? Process knowledge, cybersecurity knowledge, human and machine knowledge. What's going to happen when it comes to AGI? What type of knowledge and experiences are you going to need there? What are you going to need when quantum comes and hits the fan? And so that's kind of where I personally would start and kind of look at it is by looking at that timeline and when technical revolutions might hit and what's needed to grow those revolutions and implement it.
Okay. And we got about 3 minutes left. So I want to go down the rabbit hole when you say robotics. Can you talk about robotics and human to machine interaction? Can you talk about what exactly that means? Like, because robotics, to me, they're robots and they're physical, but AI agents are not physical.
Yeah, they're
So,
digital.
yeah,
Um,
and then human to machine interaction, is that like computer vision? Like, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
yeah, I think it starts at the digital era of your laptop and having a human to machine interface that you can kind of communicate with. But it's going to get to the hardware component very soon. Like we're already, I mean, we're kind of already seeing it. And how does the AI agents operate in those environments? How does a AI agent operate inside of a hardware piece of robot, a machine? I kind of think of it the same way how kind of like nerves and neurons work in your body without you even knowing, kind of does work and perform work and kind of tells your body what to do on its own. And that's kind of done over and over and over every second, every day. That workflow runs. That's an AI agent in our body. That's how I kind of see the hardware piece going to be going to the future. Like let's just say, for example, right, you're going to have a hardware robot, a piece of machine that does a simple task, brings you a beer every day at 5 o'clock. There's going to be AI agents inside of that piece of hardware that here's a workflow every day to check the floor for obstacles as you're going to the fridge and back to the couch. There's going to be workflows every day to check to see, where the human is sitting on the couch. So like those, like I see that being encompassed inside there. And so that is the human to machine interaction is going to start off in the virtual side. So building it out in the computers, in the apps, and the phones. But then it's going to get to the machine side as we see physical robots come into the future.
Okay. Last question for you before we go. What does implementing agentic AI responsibly in all of this, you know, technologies that you mentioned, but what does it mean to you?
Yeah. Responsibly, what does it mean to me is when I look at implementing it, what are the weak areas that can be automated and fully supported by the AI? And then what are the areas that still need to have a human in the loop for the big decision making? So as I mentioned in the side on the side of recruitment, AI can help with the entire process, but there's still a human in the loop, which is an important piece for the interview process because that human to human can detect energies over the cross of their desk. They can detect culture between someone. So that's kind of how I would see it is looking at the areas that are very highly have a high risk to it where you need a human in the loop to be implemented there. And then what are the weak areas? Because someone might come in and say, well, let's just automate the whole thing. Let's automate the whole damn thing. And that might not be the responsible way to do it. You might still need some quality assurance in there. You might need a human in there still because there's a lot of things that the AI can't do that the human can do a lot better. And liability is one of them. And then like this detection of emotions is another one of them. Like, yeah, they're building AI to detect emotions, but it's not great. It's not great right now. So that's kind of where I would start and think about it.
Sounds great. Well, Sat, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. We appreciate you. Thank you. And we'll be in touch because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about agentic AI in the next few months, few years.
Thank you so much for having me, Sorabel. I just wanted to say, all these opinions are my own and how I think about it. Nothing here is facts, but
Right.
just based on how my own experiences of utilizing agentic AI in the real world and implementing it with customers. So that's just my viewpoints on it. So it's fun. This was a fun conversation, and I look forward to it again.
Awesome. Thank you.